What does Pan-Africanism in particular mean to you in your art?
I think there's obviously an idealism to it, and I think it's something that we very much want, but I think we also have a lot of challenges connected to it. And I think maybe I am maybe not as optimistic because because Pan-Africanism is a spirit, right? It's something that also connects us all within the continent. And I mean, we're really lucky to have the internet and to have Zoom and to have all these different ways of communicating with one another and being able to, have conversations. But there's so much strength in numbers.
All right, you guys, let's get into first.
There is a movement promoting our stories, and many of us grew up with a strong craving for images we can relate to. Production teams, writers, creative heads have come together to tell stories, and this podcast is their voice. The themes covered are very relevant to the Black community, and anyone concerned by the social and racial injustices that are in place to stifle this voice. The Pan-African voice is not easily heard, and here we talk about our movies, that film or doc which you heard about but didn't get to see. What was the story? Where can I watch it? It now has a voice. Tune in. We walk you through these stories and interview the filmmakers. Welcome. Karibu sana. Karibu sana.
And starting right on the lens. Ready? And action.
In the Indian Ocean, there is an island. On this island, there is a stone town. A stone town whose buildings stand as the skeletons of its yesteryears. High tide, low tide, full moon, new moon. 6 years ago, I had an idea to make a film about the soon-to-be construction of what was termed to be Africa's largest port. I gathered the money I had and traveled alone to Lamu. Every morning I wake up saying this is going to be a good day, this is the day. The people you find to film want money. I'm here for the film, I'm not here for anything that's a choice and a sacrifice. I'm just Nairobi or not. There is no real breakthrough. No one lets you into their home. You felt used. Just make a film. Alone. We will be happy. But all I get is resistance.
Can you tell me the dua again?
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum ahla diyari min al-mu'minina wal-muslimina wa inna inshallah
All right, so here we are. It's another episode of the Pan-African Film Podcast. And today we're talking about the film called New Moon with Philippa and Ndisi-Herrmann. And her film was produced in 2018. So I'll give a little bit about the plot. And it's a very personal story, right? Where she ventures out to Lamu, an island in Kenya, and it brings her closer to her religious identity. And it also maps out a journey of conversion to Islam in a very Islamic town and environment. She traces the life of a polyamorous Muslim woman and her family and comes to terms with a new identity, really. So we have today Philippa and Ndisi-Herrmann here with us. She's the director and creator of New Moon, and she's joined us all the way from Brussels, Belgium, excuse me. But I'll let you, do a little intro of yourself, if that's okay. And then we'll move on to our new co-host today, who's Sydney Wanguhu.
Okay, so hey guys, I'm broadcasting intergalactically to you from Brussels, and happy to be here, Anna and Sydney. Yeah, so I'm Philippa Ndisi-Herrmann. I'm an artist, filmmaker, among many things, and my filmmaking is documentary, for example. The film New Moon is a documentary. I've also done some artist essays and some fiction as well, and I'm writing a fiction film at the moment. And New Moon took me 8 years to make, and initially the intention was to film how Lamu was changing, because the Kenyan government were building a large port there that they wanted to be the biggest port in Africa. And I went there to observe and record the environmental and social impacts on the island and the environment itself around the island. And I had no idea the film would become a personal film. It only was in the edit that it suddenly became about me. It was never the intention to make the film about myself. It just so happened that there were events happening in my private life, as well as the encounters I was met with as I was filming New Moon, and my relationship with Raya and her two kids, Ahmed and Abu Bakr. And ultimately, the film, yes, is an intimate and poetic story about my choice to join the Sufi Islamic path. But for me, it's also really a film about following your heart and going to places where maybe society or your mind or your upbringing tells you that you can't go for whatever reason. So it's really about, for me, on a more universal level, it's about knowing that your path is unique, and the journey of life is about following your gut, following your instinct, and taking the untraveled path, the unwalked path, and seeing where it takes you.
Yeah, and it was an incredible journey to watch. Like you said, very poetic. Yeah, so do you want to do a brief introduction of yourself, Sydney? And maybe
sure. I am Sydney Wanguhu. I'm new to the PanAfrican podcast as a co-host. I'm currently a student at Cal State LA. So I'm majoring in journalism now with a minor in business marketing. And I've been involved with journalism for a bit now, since my junior year of high school. I interned at this media nonprofit called Youth Radio, based in the Bay. And I worked my way up to becoming a journalism teacher and just helping students out create projects while getting to create whatever I wanted to. I've done interviews, album reviews, mainly focusing on writing about music and personal commentaries. And now I've switched to just focusing on writing within our arts and culture department, which has been very fun. And I definitely do see a future for myself sticking to journalism, or just creating, really, which is why I really admired how personal this was to you, because I love creating things that are personal to me in a way that people can also relate to them in however way they choose to.
Yeah, so happy to have Sydney on board with the Pan-African Film Podcast team now. Do you want to kick us off with the first question?
So, Philippa, the documentation between Raya and Ahmed's life, you captured it in a very heartwarming way. How exactly did you prepare this style of you filming to Raya? At first, were there any obstacles at all?
So to give you a bit of background, I decided I was going to make this film about the environmental social impacts. And perhaps there were maybe 4 years in between before I actually started filming Raya, maybe 3 years, where I realized that I didn't see myself making a film interviewing, let's say, important heads of Lamu, or let's say the mayor, police commissioner, whatever it is. I realized that I didn't have really the capability to do that, and I wasn't able to also. That wasn't the best film I could make, and I had tried, and I just realized that it wasn't going to work. And at that time, there was a lot of terrorism happening in the region. And for myself, I was basically on my own. I had a fixer every so often. And I also knew that I couldn't be going into certain spaces, especially even with the Kenyan government. I just didn't want to step on their toes. And again, it's not my nature to make films like that. So I decided to have a more softer approach. So I started interviewing fishermen and looking for characters, looking for people that I could be filming over a period of time who were somehow engaged with the sea or somehow had their livelihood based on the way life was then. And I filmed a lot of people. So I have a lot of material. Like I even started filming my fixer, spending time with my fixer, filming his family, etc. But what happened is I would film them and then suddenly they'd say, okay, I need to get money from you. You need to pay me, or you can't film my wife. Because in Lamu, they believe that same with taking a picture, if you take a picture, you're like taking their soul from them. So, and especially with women, there was a lot of like, let's say, I had a lot of obstacles, but I was also meeting a kind of context that had to do with the culture. And also because it is a tourist island, people are used to being photographed, but seeing their images go out into the world and not getting any money. And at the same time, they were used to also maybe having their photograph taken and being paid for it. But with documentary, obviously the same with journalism, is that in order to get an authentic story, you can't pay someone for that because it goes against like a code of conduct, right, of truth. So there were times where I considered, okay, maybe I'm going to try and support them in some way financially, because of course there's a gap in terms of a disparity of wealth. But at the same time, when I did try that, no matter how much I gave to show my appreciation, it was like they kept asking me for more and more and more. And again, I was operating on my own in Lamu, which is quite a male-dominated space. And it was very difficult. So I tried over a number of years to find different characters. So at this point, when I'd already met Raya before as a friend, let's say, or as I'd met her because she was very involved. As you've seen in the film, she's one of the things she is an environmental activist. So I'd met her at a few meetings. And then I thought, okay, one of the funders had said, just make the film on anything. So I thought, okay, why not film life of a Muslim boy? I happened to meet Raya. I asked her, what do you think about this? She's like, sure. Why don't you come over this weekend and stay with us? And you can follow the boys to school, etc. So in that way, I think it was such a fresh breath of fresh air because she didn't ask me for anything. She understood what I was trying to do. And I felt that she understood she saw beyond that. She saw the bigger picture. And in regard to your question about preparing, I mean, one of the things that I love is observational documentary, which is just having my camera and filming and almost making myself invisible. And then every so often, like asking questions if I need to, when it's necessary, or if I feel like I want to go deeper into a subject, or to maybe sometimes ask a question to kind of shake things up. So with Raya, it was really easy. I just tried to have my camera with me as much as possible. That wasn't always the case. And like, as you've seen towards the end of the film, there's a scene where I'd spent the night and we woke up in her bed together and I started filming. I didn't have my earphones, so I wasn't able to hear how it sounded. So the sound is actually quite distorted, but I just tried as much as I can to film. And also I think, again, because I like observational documentary, but I do think that the more that somebody can get used to the camera, the person that you're filming, the more it becomes less of an issue. The more the camera also becomes invisible.
I think the rawness was definitely produced by what you're describing, just spending time there, I guess. You've actually answered like the next couple of questions we had for you, which is great. I mean, it's awesome. We just wanted to hear more about the challenges and the journey. And I guess just out of curiosity, what was your original purpose in traveling to Kenya? Was it to make that more formal documentary about the economic situation in Lamu, right? And then things just changed. And then another question we wanted to ask was, how do you interpret the title, like New Moon?
Okay, so I'll come back. I'll go to the challenge and then I'll come to New Moon.
Okay.
So beyond the challenges that I've mentioned, I think what was difficult was making the film on a tight budget. So the beginning of the film, I got money for development. And then there was like a period of time where I was getting funding. I also crowdfunded at some point for the film. And actually, when I received the crowdfunding, that was like maybe 2 or 3 years into the project. When I got the money, I really froze for like a year, because suddenly it was like, okay, I've got this cash. People have supported me, and a lot of people have supported me. And I suddenly felt like I had to make a film for them. And that completely cut off my creativity, because I was looking at everything through their lens. And again, like I said, like the film that maybe I felt that they wanted me to make, I wasn't able to make. And in a way, and then I was, of course, filming all these different people. And then when the money started to run out, I think that also really pushed me and allowed me to make a film that I wanted to make. So I was still making applications for funding. I wasn't getting anything. And I'm like, actually, I'm left with this film. I'm stuck with this film. I'm producing this film, right? And I need to enjoy it, because I got quite depressed as well. And I'm like, I need to enjoy it if I'm going to spend my time doing this. So how am I going to make a film that is going to please my heart, right? So one challenge was having to find a way to make and finish this film with a tight budget. But at the same time, the advantage was that even when it came to the editing and when we finally made the choice about making it about myself, again, I had a bit more freedom, because this was like maybe 3-4 years after I had the last funding. And in between, I made a short film called Seeds, myself and the editor I was working with at the time, which is like a 4-minute film that's kind of like, I call it a visual poem. And that used some of the material from New Moon. And in New Moon, I've put a part of the film Seeds in there. And I think at that time, I learned about unique selling point. And I realized, okay, I am able to do all these different things. I've taken these photographs, I write poetry. I like to use, my voice to connect with people. Like, how can I all put it into like the film? How can I use everything that I have and make it into something? And yeah, so New Moon itself is a kind of collage. And I think a lot of my work tends to have this kind of collage feel that feels very personal, and it feels a bit like a notebook that has been, put together. And regarding the name New Moon, actually today is a new moon. So happy new moon. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a new moon in Sagittarius. So new moon, first of all, like a lot of the Abrahamic religions begin with the new moon, like Judaism, Islam as well. So like, I think probably today or yesterday or tomorrow is like would be the first day in the month of like the Islamic calendar. Also, you use the new moon when you begin the month of Ramadan, because Ramadan is a month. So the new moon is something that also spiritually as well is a beginning. And I'm very connected to the moon. I really like the moon. And of course, full moons are endings and new moons are beginnings. So it was a way of honoring the new moon, which of course is part of the symbol of Islam, but also showing the journey from one phase of life into another.
Very nice. And you were talking about incorporating all of your, your poetry, your the film, and it seems to be very dear to you, and also the relationship with your parents as well. You mentioned that quite frequently in the movie. That kind of stuck to me because I relate as well. I think the whole reason why I got into journalism is because of my parents' influence, and in the connection that you have between them. It seems like those sort of elements, artistically, there seems to be a connection between them. And or can you tell me if there is any? Did they influence you as well?
I mean, like, I guess my dad's always been a photographer. He's always loved taking photographs. So I think me falling in love with the image, the moving image, the still image, has to do with him. And I mean, I'm also an astrologer. So, I mean, I've got like so many planets in Cancer. So I'm very like family focused, home focused, mother focused. Right. So that's also something that tends to be a reoccurring theme in my work. But I'm also very interested in like, where are we from? What are our roots? How do our roots influence us? And I think that's also one thing about New Moon that, at least, and it wasn't like making the decision, right? Do I, let's say, quote unquote, become Muslim? was like, yeah, I don't want to, I wasn't born into that faith, and I was very concerned that it would make them feel that maybe I was moving away from something I was born into, let's say that. And that's something that, again, I'm talking about, let's say, faith or religion, but that can have to do with anything, like whether you change the career visions, right, that your parents have for you, or whether you move away from home and your parents want you to stay, closer to home. There's so many things that when you're making a decision about, let's say, whether it's becoming more of yourself or whether that's going towards something that your heart is calling, like what do your origins and your roots, you may feel that you're turning against it, but maybe it's not that you're turning against it, and it's about really owning it. I see it as just saying, sometimes we don't have to have the duplicity as well. We can have the duplicity can exist at the same time.
Was that difficult for them to understand at first, or have they come to terms with where you were previously?
Yeah, it was difficult in the beginning because, and this is also partly why even though I didn't want to make a film about myself, so basically what happened is I had all this material to edit. I decided it's time to finish the film, like my life has to move on. I started working with this amazing editor, Angela Wamai. I gave her the material. I said, listen, I want to make this film about day in the life of a Muslim boy. Maybe it can even be 40 minutes, something short, And I also said, but by the way, a few months ago, I converted to Islam, but it's just for you to have the context, but when you're watching the material, So she watched all the material, it took her like 3 weeks, and then we had a meeting. And she said to me, listen, I don't see anything in the film. I don't see any reason. I can't imagine editing the film because I don't see a story here. And she's like, but the parts that were shot in the madrasa or the parts that were Islamic, they have something. I feel something there. Would you be open to making it about yourself? And at this point, of course, it felt too private. But because Islam has such a bad reputation, it's like that can't be the only story about Islam. And so I felt like I had to share my story because, I didn't do it to get married, or I didn't do it, to join ISIS. I did it because I voluntarily wanted to do it. I was answering your question. I'm not sure if I answered it, but I think I kind of answered it.
No, you did. You talked about the road to get there. That's exactly what you mean. Yeah.
No, and when we were editing, it was a really interesting process to edit and to write the film in the edit, because I had to build myself up as a character. Like, how do I show my journey, right? And it's my story. It's not like a somebody's story that I'm writing. So how much do I share of myself so you understand me? How do I not overshare? How do I show my vulnerability so you understand who I am? And what materials can we use that we don't have? Because we also had even though I had a lot of footage, we didn't have so much footage that was focusing on this subject. And also I needed to find material again, like photographs of myself when I was a child. Suddenly I remembered that we had the Super 8 footage from when I was a kid. So I managed to get it digitized. So just finding all these things to somehow build me up as a character so you understand who I am. And because I also love, I'm so grateful that we have that Super 8 material, because it really does add a texture and something to understanding the family context as well.
That part was really moving, and not to stray too far off the subject, but maybe take a step back, because I know, for example, some of the festivals at which you won awards were very much Pan-African, having won at Luxor in Egypt, and then I think you won at is it Durban in South Africa, and then ZIF in Zanzibar. And I just want to give you a big shout out for that, because first of all, they're truly Pan-African film festivals, I want to say, and just to be recognized artistically around the continent must have been a great achievement. And then on top of that, I just wanted to ask you, what does, Pan-Africanism mean to you?
Thank you. Thank you. I think it was the first film in 30, 40 years at DIF in Durban that had been African, that won Best Documentary. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So that was...
Tough crowd.
Yeah, so I was very grateful. I mean, of course, it's an interesting subject, right? Pan-Africanism, because it's something that's discussed. And I think there's obviously an idealism to it. And I think it's something that we very much want, but I think we also have a lot of challenges connected to it. And I think maybe I am maybe not as optimistic because Pan-Africanism is a spirit, right? It's something that also connects us all within the continent. And I mean, we're really lucky to have the internet and to have Zoom and to have all these different ways of communicating with one another and being able to, have conversations. But there's so many people who wish that we could be more connected, even in terms of the filmmaking, of how we can watch our own films, right? And ways of like, how can we support each other as Africans to like fund our own films? I mean, there's so many discussions that have been had. And some of it has to do with the government, and some of it doesn't have to do with the government. But there's so much strength in numbers, and I wish that could happen. I've never been to FESPACO. I'd love. Anna, will you go this year? Next year? I heard it's in March or February.
Yeah, God willing, it's one of the truly the epitome of Pan-African film. So it's definitely top of my list.
Yeah.
But they've moved the dates around, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So I think, and I mean, for a lot of my friends and peers who've gone to FESPACO, and of course they say it's so amazing, is in Burkina Faso they have a tradition of watching film, and everyone is watching film. Everyone's discussing film, and I think even beyond Pan-Africanism, we have to ask ourselves, how can we be watching more films? Let's say, as a nation. So I mean, as a Kenyan, how can we be able to like watching films, not just in cinemas, right? Or like, I know also with your Ethiopian background, like how can that, I mean, actually Ethiopia's got, I don't know too much about it, but it's got a good film scene, right? So so those are my thoughts. I mean, I'm open to more questions on it, but I would like to hear what you think maybe about what I've said.
No, I mean, it's just really kind of more of a documenting process. I think everyone had some way thought about the concept of Pan-Africanism when we started the podcast, but never really verbally expressed it. And so it's just interesting to me how everybody's feeling it. I guess you were raised on the continent, right? I know for a lot of people coming from the diaspora, it's just a lot more emotional for them, whereas for us, like where we've lived it and we've seen attempts and failed attempts and reattempts, and the talk is more tangible because the honor is on us, right? It's for Africa to unite first, I feel, compared to the diaspora. The diaspora should find a united front that they can then kind of attach to. That's my perspective, but everyone has their own.
I've never really heard someone explain it in a sense of as it's a spirit, but I do agree with you that with the help of our technology now, social media, I've been able to connect with other descendants from Africa in ways I never would have thought, and it's heartwarming. It really is heartwarming, especially being first generation, because there's that sense of like familiarity, like, we don't really have to connect in this sense, but just because I know that you get it like I do in some sense, it's very comforting. So social media has really helped, and I've grown to become a part of a larger community. And that always feels good. But I was also going to ask you, I'm happy that you were given your flowers and have been in so many festivals and awarded, rightfully so. And I was going to ask what advice you have for anyone who is maybe in the film industry or even converting. What advice would you have for them?
Those are two very different subjects.
No, yeah.
I think that the way I started after I finished school was I was lucky to get a secondhand camera, a digital camera that had a problem on the lens. And I just started filming somebody, and I made a documentary over a year, just filming the person. And of course that's documentary, but I think that just to get your hands dirty, like you need to get started. You can't wait for funding to make things happen. And I don't think you can support either to make things happen. So it's really about like building a body of work, whether that's through making stuff, whether that's writing. Because, of course, the more people that you meet, if you have the material to, like if you have your script with you, or if you have the rushes from a film you're making, that allows people to really see who you are. And it also allows you to develop your skill and develop your voice. I mean, the film industry is not easy, definitely not easy. But I think also sometimes when you're an artist, it's in your blood. So you don't really have any, not that you don't have any other choice, but it's something that will it keeps moving within you and keeps knocking at your heart.
So what advice do you have for people who are trying to convert or in the process of doing so?
I think it's important to read a wide array of things and to talk to a wide array of people. And I don't think it's something necessarily to rush into, because I mean, I identify as a Sufi Muslim and I practice as a Sufi Muslim, but I also I've owned the fact that I'm connected to different types of faiths and different spiritual beliefs. And so I'm not necessarily tied to that. And I'm, in a way, I wouldn't say I'm unique in that way, but it's something that I've chosen for my life. So there's some things I don't practice and there's some things that I do. And for example, some Muslims would say that is not very Muslim to do that. But I've also had my own journey since I made New Moon that has made me affirm that I need to, again, connect to my heart and listen to my heart with what is right for me. And I have experienced, since the process of being up against, of meeting people who are like, you have to stick to the rules, these are the rules, this is, I've met a lot of conservative Muslims as well who have kind of enforced things on me that it's sometimes been very detrimental to me. So in that way, it's really important to keep listening to yourself and trusting yourself. And also nothing ever really solves anything. So if you're doing it to solve a problem, I don't think it's going to make the problem go away. And sometimes people do things for drama, right? You think, okay, I'm going to do this and suddenly my life is going to be different, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't happen. But I do know that my way of life has changed a lot before I converted and since. And that in a way does change your life. But it's not like the changing your life of the aha moment and, life is roses.
Yeah.
Did you feel, or did spending time immersed in an Islamic community help you feel more integrated as someone who was converting?
That's an interesting question. Yes and no. My interest in Islam maybe started when I was 13 and I was reading about it. For several years, I'd been reading a lot of Rumi and learning about Sufism. And so it was interesting to be spending time with and staying with a Muslim family, because I think that I hadn't really had that experience when I was, let's say, before that. So, of course, I had Muslim friends, but I'd never stayed with a Muslim family. And so it was having being able to be in their home and see how they were living, first of all, made me realize that their life is no different. But it also allowed me to appreciate certain things and see certain things in action. And I mean, Lamu was more Sufi and is less Sufi now. It's become a lot more conservative. So in that way, when I say yes and no, I also say that there were aspects of the Islam that's practiced in Lamu that doesn't feel very fitting for how I, let's say, practice my faith.
Yeah. And just to close out, we wanted to hear a little more on what we can look for next from you. Can you talk, is there anything you can talk about more? Like you mentioned a feature, any kind of contacts you want to share, links, apps, sites for your creative work in general, and if you have an outlet for New Moon or anything else.
Yeah, you can get me on Instagram, which I think I'll probably be tagged in the image, but it's at Philippa Ndisi-Herrmann. My website is www.philippandisi-herrmann.com. I'm always happy to have people write to me, to chat.
And just for our audience who might not know, just to spell it out, it's Philippa, Philippa, and Ndisi spelled Ndisi-Herrmann, which is Herrmann. So Philippa and Ndisi-Herrmann. I know I'm saying it wrong, probably, but
it's okay.
You say it so much better.
I've been practicing all my life. Yeah, and I won't say too much about the fiction film, but for me, it is also a film about listening to yourself and needing to be all that you are, because we live in a world that has a lot of beauty, but I think that some people also feel very alone because the world is not maybe fitting with the idealistic version that they want. I'm a dreamer, a natural dreamer, an idealist, and I think we need to, as idealists and dreamers, we need to show ourselves more and embody that more and share our work and share our thoughts, because it also connects to other people. And the more that we connect to other people and inspire other people and encourage other people and share more love, I think that just makes us better people and a better world. So that's a bit dreamy, but the film is about more than that, but it's like following your path and being strong and standing strong in it.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing to share. We love your journey, and we really appreciate sharing the film with us, New Moon. Thanks again. Yeah, all the way from Belgium, Philippa and Ndisi-Herrmann. Thank you.
Thank you too. Thank you, ladies. Thank you too.
And another one. Thanks again for tuning in to another episode of the Pan-African Film Podcast. We are now on Spotify and Instagram. Just search Pan-African Film Podcast to follow and like us there. Our new platform is 360 Africa. That's 360 Africa. And we want to thank our Kenyan Vibe partners. Shout out to the KV squad. Last but not least, we thank our editor Ace. Please send us your feedback, like, follow, and comment.